Vespiae in Italy Malta Mediterranea Illyrica Mesopotamia Mediapia Nesia Ila Arabia Assyrian Libya Egypt Red Sea Ethiopia. Model of the 1st century temple showing Solomon's colonnade to the east. The apostles carried on an intensive ministry in this area. Act 3. 11. 5. 12 Roman ruins in Samaria. The district of Samaria was the first region outside of Judea where the apostles were sent to preach the Christian good news. Act 8. 1-17 The seaport city of Joppa. Here the apostle Peter was given a vision directing him to preach to uncircumcised Gentiles. Act 10. 9-29 Commissioned by Jesus to be an apostle to the nations, Paul zealously carried out his assignment. Row 11. 13 His first missionary trip took him through Cyprus and into Asia Minor. He was thrown out of cities by angry mobs, even stoned and left for dead. But he returned to strengthen those who had become disciples. On his second trip, he reached into Macedonia and Greece. Here he was able to give a witness at the Areopagus in Athens, as illustrated below. On Paul's third trip, he preached for some 3 years in Ephesus, a crossroads of the Roman world. Then he went on to Macedonia and Greece to build up the congregations there. When being held prisoner by the Roman government, Paul used his time well to write inspired letters that are part of the Bible today. Apostle Paul's Ministry 746, First Trip. Act 13. 1. 14. 28 Second Trip. Act 15. 36. 18. 22 Third Trip. Act 18. 23. 21. 19 Paul's first missionary trip. Paul's route Rhodes Pia MP Hylia Tarsus Derblistria Iconium Galanzatia Rantosh Pisidi Perga Italia Rantosh Seleucia Syria Cyprus Salamis Paphos. Paul's second missionary trip. Paul's route Rhodes Syria Rantosh Cili Adobe Par MP Hylia Gia Elati Listria Iconium Phrygia Azia Bithynia Mesia Troas Amphipolis Philippi Thessalonica Berea Athens Corinth Ephesus Mediterranea Nesia Crete Ci by US Caesarea Jerusalem. Paul's third missionary trip. Paul's route Rhodes Antiochia Elatia Phrygia Ephesus Troas Marci Edonif Philippi Giri Assos Modalian Chios Samus Miletus Kos Patara Rhodes Mediterranea Nesia Crete Cyprus Tyre Ptolemais Caesarea Jerusalem Damascus, the street called Straight. After his conversion, blinded Saul was led to a home on this street. Act 9. 3-16 Theatre in Ephesus, where worshippers of Artemis Inset rioted in protest against Paul's ministry. Act 19. 29-41 Ruins of Antioch in Pisidia. After Paul had witnessed effectively in the synagogue here, he was thrown out of the city by an angry mob. Act 13. 14-50 Traditional site of Paul's prison in Philippi. Paul was beaten and imprisoned in this city, but the jailer and his household became Christians. Act 16. 19-34 Wall of ancient Thessalonica. After Paul had reasoned from the scriptures with the people here, an angry mob threw the city into an uproar. Act 17. 1-9 Ruins of ancient Corinth below, with Acra Corinth in the background. Paul endeavored to fortify Christians here in Corinth against the immoral way of life that surrounded the Athenian Acropolis as it now appears right. In the right foreground is the Areopagus, where Paul spoke to Rome as a prisoner. Act 23. 11. 28. 31 Paul was kept under guard in a house in Rome for 2 years. During that time he wrote 5 inspired letters to fellow Christians. Paul's trip to Rome. Paul's route Caesarea Sidon Cyprus Cilicia Galatia Myra Asia Nidus Crete Corda Mediterranea Nesia Macedonia Italy Malta Sicily Syracuse Regium Puteoli Romesi. Shortly before his death in 33 CE Jesus called Jerusalem the killer of the prophets and stoner of those sent forth to her. The city as a whole followed the pattern of its past and rejected the Son of God. Mount 23. 37. Jesus foretold what would happen. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build around you a fortification with pointed stakes. Luke 19. 41-44 He also said, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by encamped armies, then let those in Judea begin fleeing to the mountains. Luke 21. 20-21 In 66 CE following a Jewish revolt, Roman armies under Stius Gallus came against Jerusalem. But, As Josephus notes, Gallus suddenly recalled his troops and, contrary to all calculation, retired from the city. This afforded Christians the opportunity to flee from Jerusalem, which they did. Soon the Roman armies under Titus returned. This time they built a fortification with pointed stakes, an encircling fence 7.2 kilometers 4.5 mi long. After a siege of about 5 months, the city was thoroughly destroyed and the temple reduced to ruins. 3 years later, in 73 CE, the Roman armies captured the last Jewish stronghold, the mountaintop fortress of Masada. See below. Jerusalem's destruction emphasizes the importance of paying attention to Bible prophecy. Jerusalem destroyed by the Romans. Roman coins commemorating destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE 751. Roman conquest and destruction of Jerusalem, 70 CE. Arch of Titus in Rome showing Roman soldiers with temple loot. Raven 753. Rape. Rape is defined as unlawful sexual